Okay, well, I'm always interested in career choices people make and how eventually down the line they seem to regret it. I mean, like, I've been an actor for many years, and well, I kind of consider myself a recovering failure, and for some reason my successful friends say they envy me. My friend Paul is a lawyer, and he wishes he had done something more creative, and I wish I lived indoors. See, middle age is wasted on the middle-aged. Paul has a very successful career as a lawyer, and he wants to quit to become a singer. It's not like he's got a bad voice, but being a lawyer, he's got no soul, so he misses the point. Paul could sing the Banana Boat song and make it sound pro-management. Labor Day, he did 2 ballads at a union rally and was declared an honorary scab by the AFL-CIO.
As comedian Benny Benowitz demonstrated, oftentimes lawyers get a bad rap. I mean, let's face it, who among us hasn't heard a good lawyer joke or two?
Stereotyping is always interesting because I know I resent it, and yet I find myself slipping into it. This is an event that happened in Borough Park, Brooklyn, which is a very Orthodox Jewish neighborhood, and apparently a kid had been hit by a car. And I got there was a crowd around, and they were loading the poor boy into an ambulance, and as the ambulance took off, 10 Orthodox Jews were running after it, and I said, it looks like a gym class in law school, and everybody got mad at me.
Most people think that lawyers choose their path largely for the money and the prestige, but you're about to hear from a few legal professionals who shatter the stereotype. I've had the pleasure of interviewing lawyers, mediators, and others in the legal field who actually bring their heart and soul to their work. I'm Mary Lynn Schiavi, and welcome to Pro Se Nation.
And it occurred to me that there needed to be somebody who could advocate for these people who could not advocate on behalf of themselves. And that's when I decided I would stop reading other people's words and I'd start speaking my own.
Somebody does have a claim and they don't have any money and they're taking on maybe a small employer, maybe a big employer, maybe the government. I think that takes a lot of guts. And so, yeah, I want to help those people. I want to be there for those people.
And I just love the transformation that my clients make from when they first walk in the door until the end of their case. If the case is managed properly, you see a lot of growth in them.
Why do I love what I do? How can I not? I mean, I wake up each morning with an opportunity to work with some of the brightest minds in terms of entrepreneurs or technologists.
One person's explanation of how he became a lawyer. He said that his parents convinced him that since he was so uniformly unpleasant to everybody, he ought to be paid for it.
I love that we can really sometimes think outside the box and get resolutions that no one ever dreamed they'd get when they first started filing their lawsuit.
It's working with real people, property owners, business owners, and that really drew me to it.
Because we're really helping people. It's a permanent way to solve income inequality. Does anyone think Donald Trump is punching a clock? I mean, really.
I also now represent government in these type of cases, but since I'm coming from a property owner perspective, where I've represented property owners for almost 25 years, I try to be as fair to owners as I possibly can.
What do you love about what you do?
I love representing my clients and helping them through a process that otherwise can be not only very overwhelming but quite stressful. So often when I get clients, they're already in a vulnerable position. Often they have some kind of personal injury or they've suffered some professional malpractice. And then to be confronted by the court system, it's like a monolith.
Frequently, people just want to tell a lawyer their story.
Right.
They want to tell their lawyer their story to someone. So, often your initial meeting with a client is their opportunity to tell that story.
I can also righteously pursue the claim on their behalf. So often, especially in personal injuries lawsuits, I have clients come to me and they say, I pay my premiums every month. Why isn't the insurance company paying me?
Right.
Talk about frustrating. So it feels great to be able to go and say, it's time to pay the claim, and to help my clients through the process.
One of the great joys of practicing is when you're, it's not required, but when your interests and your client's interests align, your personal interests in effecting a change, and your client's interests align, it's one of the most wonderful things and professionally satisfying things.
Why do you love what you do? And the other is, what do you want your legacy to be? What do you want to leave to the world?
Well, why do I love what I do? How can I not? I mean, I wake up each morning with an opportunity to work with some of the brightest minds in terms of entrepreneurs or technologists, creatives, and professionals in going through ideation, coming up with creative ideas for new businesses and ventures. I get an opportunity to give feedback and advise and help entrepreneurs. And on the nonprofit side and the large corporations or educational institutions, I get to help them from an entrepreneurship perspective in terms of coaching and advising. I get to invest. So I spent a decade or more in the private equity space investing in entrepreneurs and as an angel investor. And I get to create tons of strategic partnerships and joint ventures and launch new companies and products and meet new people all the time. It's bigger than being a kid in a candy store.
Yeah.
It's really merging passion with purpose, with experience, and you get to push that comfort zone. I really get to experiment and break out of that comfort zone almost on a daily basis.
I'm going to sound a little like Oprah when I ask this question, but what do you love about what you do?
Well, it kind of aligns with what you're trying to do for the average citizen. I love talking to policymakers about the importance of predictable law. Employers will disagree sometimes in the State House about the proper public policy choice, but once it's law, they want to comply. And they need to know what their obligations are and what that's going to mean for them. And too often we see a lot of well-meaning bills drafted up that leave a lot to the courts, and that's an expensive way to resolve disputes. And so one of the kind of conversational points I've tried to make in this is that when employers know what they have to do and they can do it, they're going to do it. The good ones are, and the bad ones, there should be protections against the bad ones. And so predictable, simple law is really important. And right now we're having a big discussion in Trenton about paid sick leave and whether we should have a mandatory minimum. Well, that would be one thing, and leave aside the merits of that argument. But if the statute just said you shall offer so many sick days and left it there, employers would know what to do. The bill is far more complicated than that and will lead to an enormous amount of litigation because it creates some rebuttable presumptions for retaliatory employment practices with 90 days, even if you mention the word paid sick leave in the workplace. And it's exactly the kind of bill that I think we should be avoiding because it's not clear to everybody how to comply with it. Simple, predictable law is understandable to the average citizen, it's understandable to the business owner, and it clearly defines what our obligations are to each other under the law and to society.
And
your
it's
legacy?
so fulfilling. Legacy, I would hope that there's an appreciation or at least an acknowledgement that I have created a positive impact for thousands of people. And I think entrepreneurship is a vehicle that can really be broad-reaching, where you can make tremendous impact on people and on the world. So I love the saying, entrepreneurs go change the world, because they in fact do.
Yeah.
And a little bit of that, I'm humbled to be in a situation where I can help so many entrepreneurs. And I love building companies. I'm a business builder. And so the legacy is a little bit of, yeah, he used that vehicle of entrepreneurship to create a positive impact on the world and on people. There's nothing better, in my opinion.
And I bet one of your favorite, I think it's up on your wall at Juice Tank, Walt Disney's It's Kind of Fun Trying to Do the Impossible.
Yeah.
I think I turned that around, but it's a dyslexic version of Walt Disney's.
A lot of people who raise concerns about how they have been treated in the workplace, whether it is some kind of discrimination case or a whistleblower case or a harassment case, a lot of them have difficulty finding legal representation. Many of them, after all, don't have a job anymore, so they are going to have a hard time paying a lawyer's hourly rate. When you see lawyers who charge $400 an hour, that's most people are going to say, I don't know if I can afford $400 an hour. Paying
when the average person makes $25 an hour.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
even paying the plumber $80 an hour is tough for a lot of people. They'll try to fix their own faucet. So, access to the legal system for a lot of people is unavailable because of finances. And there are a very high percentage of employment cases are brought by people who are pro se. And unfortunately, if you are not trained in the law and you bring a case that is this complicated, you're going to get killed. I mean, I'm a lawyer. I would not buy a house without help from another lawyer. I wouldn't go through a divorce without help from another lawyer. Even an uncontested, I wouldn't do it. It's just the area is too complicated, it's too treacherous. So for me, when I have people who are coming to us and who have meritorious cases, and we, by the way, turn away about 9 out of 10 people who come to us. We very candidly tell them, sorry, you don't have a claim. But when somebody does have a claim and they don't have any money and they're taking on maybe a small employer, maybe a big employer, maybe the government, I think that takes a lot of guts. And so, yeah, I want to help those people. I want to be there for those people.
What prompted you to go into law, and how do you feel about your choice now based on the reality, your experiences and the reality of the legal system now? Is it as you imagined it would be?
Well, given that I'll be practicing law 25 years next year, I would say to you that it's almost impossible to answer. So much has changed. You become so much older, Mary Lynn. And I became a lawyer following in my father's footsteps. He's a patent attorney. He's retired now. Hi, Dad. But, I wanted to be almost like a doctor, the family doctor. I wanted to be where people needed me to be. And, I started my career, ironically, the opposite way. I ended up working at a very large law firm, doing things as far removed from the average person as possible. But that was just the nature of the beast. And, top talent was lured by top law firms. 25 years later, I think I've come full circle, and my practice really is more about practical solutions and practical guidance and trying to resolve things before they get to a litigation mode in a way that actually helps the unrepresented person and helps management to resolve these differences without it becoming a debacle and a huge cost expense. So ironically, I would say I ultimately accomplished my goal, but like they say, the road not taken, the journey is really the interesting part of the story.
Mary Ann?
I was on my way to Rutgers Graduate School of Social Work when on a whim I decided to take the LSATs, which is the test that you need to get into law school. I did well on them and wound up going to law school. I love what I do. I found the social worker in me is probably able to be a more effective tool for my clients in the legal arena than I would be in the social work arena. And I just love the transformation that my clients make from when they first walk in the door until the end of their case. If the case is managed properly, you see a lot of growth in them. And what they initially thought was perhaps the worst thing that could have happened to them if handled properly winds up being a positive change.
that the way you decided, taking the LSAT on a whim reminds me of the scene from Legally Blonde, where she runs into her ex-boyfriend at Harvard Law School, and he's like, "What are you doing here?" And essentially she says, "What? Like it's hard to get into law school?" What do you love about being a mediator?
I love the creativity. I love that we can really sometimes think outside the box and get resolutions that no one ever dreamed they'd get when they first started filing their lawsuit.
I love that we can help people. I think people come into the dispute process, think of litigation, they see what, like you started the show, they see their impression of litigation process is what they see on television. And they come into mediation, the mediation acts as their day in court, and they get something more than they probably would have ever expected out of the court process, because it's not just money, it actually meets their interests and what their needs are.
I love the challenge. When I walk into a mediation room, I am always very well prepared, and there are always surprises. Always surprises. And I love it at the end of the day where people who are, on these opposite polars are leaving so relieved that they understand the other side and there is a solution and they can go on with their lives.
Mm-hmm. Well, not to turn this into another type of show, but blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be children of God. I believe that's... I'm not sure if I'm correct.
That is one of my favorite episodes, by the way.
Noel, how about you?
Well, I don't know if I even made a conscious decision, because for as far back as I could remember, being a lawyer was all I ever wanted to be, all I ever intended. It's irrelevant in my case that my father...
Were you suing people who tortiously interfered in your lemonade stand, like Louis back then?
You might have supposed that was the thing. Yes, yes. I remember one person's explanation of how he became a lawyer. He said that his parents convinced him that since he was so uniformly unpleasant to everybody, he ought to be paid for it.
Pretty much everyone I've interviewed so far, I've asked sort of the road they've traveled to get to the kind of law that they're practicing and what they love about what they're doing. Robert, would you like to share?
When I started with Waters, the opportunity to go into something, it's a constitutional perspective on it. It's working with real people, property owners, business owners, and that really drew me to it. You really get to work closely with the client and with experts to be creative and come up with ways to make the property value worth more. Mm-hmm. And that's really what, in the end, the property owner wants. Even if they don't want to sell, in the end, they want to get as much money as possible so they can go on with their lives and be happy.
Actually have about 1 minute left, so you have 30 seconds each. Beat the clock. What do you love about what you're doing right now?
Well, this is a bottom-up campaign. This is grassroots. Our website has crashed 3 times. We've continued to increase the server capacity. People are just flooding to this idea. This is. If
but what do you love about this?
Because we're really helping people. It's a permanent way to solve income inequality. Mm-hmm. That's the economic issue of our time, mm-hmm. and we can do it with common sense proposals that have been proven to work, mm-hmm. with nearly 100 years of data. So the people are going to drive this debate. Mm-hmm. The people are going to do this because they don't know about it. They just don't know that there is a solution. Does anyone think Donald Trump is punching a clock? I mean, really, his wealth is coming from capital.
Right,
the rest of the nation, the poor middle class, need to get in on the same thing, and that's what's going to save the country.
And what do you love about what you're doing?
I think this is such a complicated problem, that income inequality, and we do have an idea that we wanted to really do an outreach to the people and educate the people, mm-hmm. about they can help themselves by embracing this idea. Mm-hmm. And I'm so thrilled that even though I was a legislator before, now I'm not a legislator, but in this area of economics and try to see to improve the personal income, I think mm-hmm. is a wonderful experience.
It's the opportunity to represent people, help them out in a fairly narrow field of the law. I've also now represent government in these type of cases, but since I'm coming from a property owner perspective, where I've represented property owners for almost 25 years, I try to be as fair to owners as I possibly can, and to be quite frank, not to do some of the things that I've seen government do to, in some cases, not that many, but some, and to be able to be fair to property owners in really what is a difficult situation, because you're basically, your property is being taken.
You know, one of the things we do is we uniformly represent everybody on a contingency basis, so we don't charge on an hourly basis. So when somebody comes to us, they don't have a job, it's like, it's okay, you don't need to have a job. One of the things about SEPA that allows somebody to make a living doing that, because I still have to buy groceries. One of the things about SEPA is that if you prevail, the employer must pay your legal fees on an hourly basis. And so I can take a case that actually, you know, the person's a relatively low-paid employee. Maybe they only made $30,000 a year. They're not going to have big economic damages, okay? They're not going to have a $500,000 verdict, but it's okay. It's all right, because if I take it to trial and I win, I'm going to get all of my legal fees anyway, and I can manage that. That's one of the big benefits of the SEPA statute.
So that's considered, I guess it's known as a fee-shifting case. And does that come with, I've heard, treble damages? Or
No,
Or
that's the Consumer Fraud Act.
The Consumer Fraud
that's
has
consumer
treble damages.
Okay.
SEPA has simply
See, a
punitive
little
damages.
knowledge is dangerous, right?
SEPA has punitive damages, which just mean basically that above and beyond the harm that you suffered, a jury may, doesn't have to, may award additional damages in order to deter the employer from doing it again. Punitive damages are extraordinarily rare. It's very, very rare to get a jury to award punitive damages, and frankly, it's very rare for punitive damages to be upheld on appeal. A lot of people, unfortunately, see these things in the newspaper, $2 million verdict, and they don't understand a $2 million verdict ain't worth the paper it's written on. And until you survive the appellate process, you don't have anything, and most of those verdicts are cut down or overturned completely.
Right. You actually have the law, the legal profession way back. It goes way
My
back.
grandfather was a lawyer of some renown, actually, but like my father, was a product of an apprentice system. I'm the first in, my brother and I, my older brother, no longer living, we are the first in the family to have attended as much as one day in either a college or a law school. And my grandfather was a United States attorney in Buffalo, New York.
And what was his claim to fame?
I'll appeal to you not to repeat it, but I'll tell you. He prosecuted a woman who committed the crime of voting, and her name was Susan B. Anthony. And
how timely this year,
and I
right?
tell, I tell people that that she succeeded in getting her face on our money, and grandfather could never get his hands on it.
I hope you've been inspired by what our legal professionals have shared with regard to their career paths, their motivations, and why they love what they do. Thanks for joining us for this edition of Pro Se Nation. I'm Mary Lynn Schiave. See you in the future.